Well, the main question of the podcast is I would love to hear a story or stories where you feel like you've witnessed something that was miraculous or magical, even mysterious in your life. And just tell my listeners whatever you feel comfortable with. And I've had everything from mothers to best friends to ghosts to someone who died 3 times. I mean, everything you can imagine, synchronicities. All that to say that everything's on the table. So I'd love to hear whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, so I think it'd be hard for me to top the twin daughter story, just out of fairness. So I might not be able to do it as much justice following up with another story because that one usually is like the one is like, yep, that's the haymaker right there. um, but when I think about it, when I think about miracles, it's kind of one of those things for me. It's just like oftentimes I'm reminded every day of how little miracles can happen. Um, I do come back to as far as like my daughters because, you know, I just think about it in terms of, with them and how they're growing up and the different personalities that they're molding that sort. I think one of the things that came off to my mind was um just how blessed that things worked out the way they did for them. Because I guess the miracle story would be the sense that they got a lot from me, obviously, because I'm their father. Um, but another thing they got from me that most people don't know about me is um, I grew up being on the autism spectrum. And I realized that that's something that you don't necessarily grow out of. And so that's kind of part of, who you are and what makes you you. And I think it's a miracle story in itself where when I was growing up in Memphis, at that time, people looked at autism spectrum disorder, Asperger's syndromes, and anything along those lines a lot differently than how they look at it now. Right. So we're talking about 40 years ago, essentially. Um, and I think part of the miracle story about that, is for me, when I was growing up, I was nonverbal until I was about 4 years old, according to my mom. I would just sit there and smile at you, wouldn't say a thing. And now, as a parent, trying to imagine what would it be like for my kids to not talk until they were 4 years old would be pretty dramatic for me, right? And so I think that part of the miracle for me to even be talking to you today, right, the way and the manner that I talk to you here is a miracle because this wasn't so much something that was just me. Like somebody had to make that investment to really see something different from what whether it's doctors or therapists or psychologists saw. And I think a lot of credit goes to my mother and my grandparents for sure, especially my grandmother, because I do remember many times, many summers, I would just sit on her lap and she would just talk to me, read stories. She'll work with handwriting with me, um, try to do math, phonics flashcards, play Chinese checkers as I get older. Like she had the type of unconditional love for me that was much needed. Um, and especially when it comes to like providing services to help accommodate where I was development wise in school, I think she was very much instrumental and essential for me to be able to get that type of early intervention love and support where it then became something where at one point now I'm trying to catch up with my classmates now and junior high school now I'm like kind of one of the same with them, like you can't tell a difference. Obviously like for me it's like being on here you probably couldn't tell that I'm on the autism spectrum, so part of it is like being able to quote unquote conceal it as far as any quirks or things that you might be able to point out. um But then my grandmother challenging me to say, "Hey, like we've come this far, why not take it up a notch? What would it be like if you really did your best in school?" And so going from like 6th or 7th grade, just trying to fit in now and not be made fun of this time, um, to then being valedictorian in my 8th grade class, and then going on from there and doing well in high school and onward and that sort. I think that would be part of the miracle story for me because I don't think many people back at that time when I was nonverbal would think that I would have this type of future leading up to my 40th year. And so now things becoming full circle. I have my kids. They later are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. At least now we see it in advance early enough where we can do something about helping them and helping support them, because oftentimes the diagnosis is just one part of the equation, and oftentimes a lot of people get that diagnosis so late in the game, so to speak, that they're trying to catch up with lost time, and it may be the sense where it may be too late, or just it becomes that much more difficult to help them learn what's needed so that they can be included in classrooms going forward. And so for us being able to find that out early, find the right services, being in Boston in particular, that was able to help accommodate us and help accommodate our kids. And now, as they're finishing first grade, about to go to second grade, you probably can't tell the difference in terms of like where they come from. Um, just seeing the progress of where they started and where they're at now, especially as a father who's on the autism spectrum himself, I think about it very much as like that is a modern day miracle for me now.